then some rogue code sucks all the mafia, Swiss bank accounts, and all of a sudden Greenpeace are like, yes, we can save another whale, yes! They're all like, hey.
Today on Foreplay, we end the Heist arc with Sneakers, a film from 1992 with an all-star cast. But as usual, we'll be announcing the next arc of Foreplay on this show, so you guys can go ahead and watch the films. And because we are very blatantly attempting to capitalize on the recent hype of Dune Part 2, we are going to do our first director arc. So this won't be a genre like the other ones we've done. It will be focusing on the work of a single director. And since I mentioned Dune, you know that's Denis Villeneuve. And so we are going to
say David Lynch.
Oh, that would have been the old switcheroo right there. Very, very David Lynch-esque in some ways. But in any case,
it would also just be funny if we just pretended like we genuinely thought that was the Dune they're all referred to with such boomers way. You're like, Dune, you're gonna bloody love Twin Peaks, Firewalk with me then.
We will be doing Arrival, which is probably his most famous film prior to the release of Dune and is really quite excellent. We will then do Prisoners. Third will come Sicario. And then fourth, we will do Dune. And as you probably know, we are all massive fans of the Dune novel, but especially Thorin is a massive Dune fan. So there's going to be a lot of talk about how the differences from the novel exist within the film, how the novel translates, if it's effective or not. So you guys can go ahead and look forward to that one.
Duncan's even read some of the Brian Herbert books.
I actually have. And they're garbage.
Yeah, no.
Luckily, because there's the thing. Actually, one thing we haven't really talked about much on this series in general, but obviously because sequels are a big thing in movies, we will get to at some point. And it's actually one thing, actually, that bizarrely, I don't know if Richard knows this, but in the UK especially, people were mad into that thing, a bit like America, of like the home straight-to-video type movies with their sequels. Because one thing I never got was that never made sense to me, because somehow I always understood, like, it's the director and the screenplay and the actor that, like, makes the film. But, like, dude, the amount of people in the UK who would go and get like the sequel to some like famous movie, and you're like, bro, it's from the video shop. There's no one in it. Look, like it says the sequel, but there's like nobody connected with it, and they would just be like, might be good. And you're like, it won't be. It has no chance to be good. So first of all, I'm not the person anyway who like gets into sequels like that anyway. And then secondly, all you need to know about the Dune novel series, I'll give you this little insane angle of like a marketing hook, is even in one of the worst periods of my life where I was experiencing the worst depression and feeling of hopelessness and don't know what you're going to do in your life, should you even go on. At the time, I won't explain the circumstances, but I was actually reading one of the Dune novels, and it was one of the only things that when I would read, it was so straight fire. I was like, yeah, why the fuck all my shit in life. This is actually straight fire. And I would be going off in that world. Then I would come back and, oh yeah, shit, I am me in this real world. Oh yeah, bloody woe is me. And I would go back, oh, it's fucking straight fire, look, strandworms and that. Yeah, so all you need to know is that's how good it is. It can even draw you out of your shit little life into something better.
Yeah.
Much like maybe this movie drew Richard into a worldscape of impossible imagination.
Well, yeah, we'll get to Sneakers. But yeah, which he did not do. But I mean, just talking about the Dune novel, obviously, I read them when I was very young. I read them in my early teens. And you know, I had an uncle who was very into like sci-fi fantasy, and he loaned me all of the books right the way through to Chapter House. So I read them all, and you know, as a kid, had a very surface level kind of, you know, grasp of what it was, because I was very invested in the idea of the hero's journey and Paul Atreides being, you know, a fucking he's the good guy, right? He's the hero, right? We want him to win, and it's good that he wins, and the golden path and all of this. And I was like, I couldn't understand the way it went. I was like trying to piece it together in my head. I was like, why is this happening? And you know, without doing any spoilers for later in the books, when Paul sort of briefly comes back, I was like, yeah, I was super stoked, and then he's gone again. You're like, what the fuck is that? So, and then obviously as an adult, I realized like what the book is really saying is about, you know, the false idols, failed institutions, and sort of, you know, the idea of like people believing in infallibility and this kind of thing. And you know, going back and reading the books, you know, probably want to say like 5, 6 years ago. I read through them all again. I mean, this is work that like actually really holds up, and I think
Oh, yeah.
one of the problems it's always had is that unfortunately too many people do engage with it on that surface level because
People
deliberately
think it's
so.
Harry Potter, basically. Yeah,
Yeah,
they do.
exactly.
I'm
It
with
was
you.
the way Frank Herbert wrote it deliberately was to have the traditional hero's journey, and
Yes.
you have to read right the way through to sort of understand the real switcheroo with this. Because I mean, ultimately, this is a world that it's rich, it's deep, but it goes millennia, into the future. So you can see the ramifications of what happens in that original hero's journey, and indeed the things that happen before it, and what that sort of leads to in the vast future. And its scope, its scale, it's way bigger than something like Game of Thrones, or some of the other classic fantasy, like Lord of the Rings, some of the other classic fantasy series.
I mean, the scope
which
is universe wide by the end.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
It's
I mean,
truly epic.
I mean, I will say, I think it sort of ends. I mean, Chapter House Dune, it ends on a weaker note than certainly where it starts. And I've always had a soft spot for God Emperor, which probably surprises absolutely nobody. Who wouldn't want to be a giant immortal sandworm human hybrid? But
That's one of my lines in The Sand, mate. When people actually tell me it's a real opinion, they go, "The first Dune's good, but don't ever read the fourth one." They're like, "Well, in that case, we are mortal enemies, so it's all good." Obviously, we have no shared human values or anything. Probably up is down to you, good is evil. So I will have to destroy you and your lineage to the seventh generation. Yeah,
it's all that can be done. But anyway, I mean, look, what excites me about the movies, and spoiler, obviously we're going to get there, but I didn't really fuck with the first all of that much because I think it wasn't. First of all, the marketing didn't even mention there was going to be a sequel. I didn't see that. I mean, I think a lot of people went in thinking.
I actually watched it and was like, "Is that it? What? What's going on?"
Yeah. I think a lot of and especially because the last line is like, "Yeah, it's only just beginning."
Oh, it's mad, isn't it? It's metal, in it. Even like pure Hollywood cringe.
Give me the sidearm. Give me the sidearm. I've got this one.
It's true.
Like, to end on like an unbelievably cliched note, and then and then just the reveal. There is going to be a sequel.
The only one could have been worse is if he turned to that Charlie character who's like, "I think this could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship."
Beautiful friendship, yeah, I know. Yeah, with his eyes like mad blue.
Walk up from the sand dune and all.
Yeah, exactly. Or like with two sandworms like kissing in the background as well. Like just fucking, hang myself. Like it's just horrible. But anyway, like I will say, like I love Denis Villeneuve as a director, and certainly without again getting into spoilers or anything, the sequel to the film is way better. And also on top of that, they're gonna make Dune Messiah, which I'm fucking that's never been done. So I am fucking really psyched about where it goes. And honestly, in terms of visionary directors that are out there today, I really can't think of a director you could have got, who could be attached to bringing the Dune universe to life. That's a better choice than Denis Villeneuve. He's such a visionary character. This is essentially the equivalent of getting Peter Jackson and doing Lord of the Rings. He was the perfect director in that moment to do that movie and do it justice. And so while I think the first installment of Dune is, for me, a very average movie, and certainly there's an argument to say it's Denis Villeneuve's worst movie up until that point, I think the series has redeemed itself, and I'm very excited for what comes.
Very good. Well, we'll get into it. So if you guys have been enjoying Dune 2 and have liked the hype of it, why not join us to dive into his back catalog? Because there's also some other really fucking good sci-fi in there, particularly Arrival, which is a great movie. So if you haven't seen that, you will have your mind blown. It's a very cool adaptation of a unique short story. All right, let's get into Sneakers, which is less fun to talk about than Arrival. Richard apparently has some. I thought this was okay. Like I thought it was all right. It has a great cast. Obviously, a pretty eclectic, I would say, cast with Robert Redford, Dan Aykroyd, who is coming off of his like 80s Blues Brothers bender, and very famous Saturday Night Live cast appearances. So he's kind of the comic relief in the film. Ben Kingsley, Mary McDonnell, River Phoenix was this his last movie before he died?
It's got to be one of them, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah,
It's
because
got to be one of them.
when was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade?
Oh, that was
I think
in
that was
the
94
80s.
something.
No, that was 89.
Or-
Yeah.
89.
89?
Yeah, it was 89.
So yeah, this must be that, because this has got to be like one of his last movies. Yeah, for real. When did he die? I'm gonna look it up now.
He died in 93.
Should have done that before the film. Oh, there you go.
He died in 93. But I guess he had finished some other films. So I'm looking now. He was in The Thing Called Love and Silent Tongue. And apparently a movie called Dark Blood, which was that came out in 2012, that he filmed some scenes in. They used some scenes from him in 93. So, one of his last movies, but it definitely at like the peak of his popularity at this point in time. I'd
even go so far as to say, if you look at the rest of the cast, it's quite a coup for him to be in that level of consideration.
Yeah. Especially Sidney Poitier also, who's a fucking legend.
Look,
James Earl Jones rocks up for a fucking cameo in this movie.
True.
So, like Ben Kingsley, like this. The thing that pissed me off about this film is I remember now as well. I remembered as I was watching it, I was like, oh shit, I have seen this before, and now I remember why the fuck I forgot it, because I've never seen a cast like this squandered on such piss weak material. And, we'll get to it when you do your little plot fucking description, which, by the way, talk about a needlessly convoluted plot for what is essentially quite simple. And they're trying to add depth to something that ultimately is just a classic bait and switch. Everyone's got there's multiple bait and switches in this fucking piece of shit. But yeah, it's like this cast is like, wow, this should have been a film that really transcended the material. But it just goes to show, I think, this would be Exhibit A, and sometimes having fantastic actors, it's not enough for a movie to actually be good and entertaining. So yeah, I was like sort of bitterly disappointed by the end of the film, actually.
I think it's really just kind of mediocre, right? I think some of the concepts in it are interesting, and certainly the actors are quite good. So I guess I wasn't totally as bored by it as you were, Richard, but it is kind of like nondescript in the end. It's kind of just inoffensively bland and somewhat forgettable, which
in a way, it makes it worse than the Thomas Crown Affair, and I'll explain why. Because Thomas Crown Affair,
you can see the upside to it. There was an ambitious premise, I would say.
Yeah, and it tried things, and obviously there were some people in it like Denis Leary who are just forever, human pieces of shit and irredeemable in the eyes of God, right? But at least they sort of swung for the fences and did some, they tried, they were trying. Pierce Brosnan is fucking trying. He's like the best thing about the movie. Everyone in this film is in fucking cruise control, and like it's very apparent. And so mediocrity with this cast to me is more offensive than the Thomas Crown Affair. The highlight being Pierce Brosnan's ass. This should have really been something.
You obviously, but yeah, sure. No, here's the thing. I was actually one who agree. I was the one who suggested this film, but here's the thing. I don't think I've seen this for about 20 years. I think I rewatched it once when I was like a young adult. The problem that they've ruined that term. Everyone thinks young adult means 14-year-old. I mean like 20 or something. So it's a long time since I saw it. It's not as good as I thought, but here's the thing. I'm with Monty. To me, the joke is I actually knew that, I fucking hoped there was no way he could criticize this movie, because how could you like the Thomas Crown Affair? They're not like this film. It's the same fucking shit, mate. Like, in fact, I'd even say
it has elements for Monty here. You have set a trap for
elements that's similar to that. Like if you notice, one of the things this movie, while it works, I do think it does take away from the gravitas of the movie. Which is, if you notice, it keeps trying to do this thing where this is why I don't quite agree with Richard. Like, to me, it's not a great movie, but like I do actually think some of what it attempted with like the things that are bigger bigger than just the plot were interesting. Like some of the things it was trying to talk about, because essentially this is a film like a lot of the others that you have to put in its time. Like this movie, remember, it's from 1992, guys. Think about when the Soviet Union ended. This is a movie that is massively about the idea of a post-Soviet world and that whole thing of like rogue states and like, you know, we're not actually more safe now, we're less safe, and there's going to be even more like, you know, because remember the logic of the public's supposed to be as the Cold War ends, right? That's the end of the war, right? The end of the battle, and then they want to spin up this idea that Hollywood did of like, no, now there's going to be even more espionage and terrorism and fucking, you know, cryptography is the new. In fact, that's even a thing they try to hint in this movie, that like the new domain is like the digital space of warfare, and it's cryptography that's now the new battle. And what if you could decrypt all the things, etc. So some of those things I did think were quite interesting. But I will say one of the problems it has as a film is it wants to like lead into some like potentially quite a large, big question topics like that. But then each time it's to the heist part, it does come out a la Thomas Crown into a very sort of almost like light-hearted. Even the music will just sort of be like, it's like the sort of music when like a fucking, you know, professor in a movie is like collecting like fucking gifts for people for a party, like that is going on a lot. So I will say it does have an issue with tone. Like it doesn't quite know it's a serious movie about like, it's not heat put out with guys. Like,
well, yeah, and I agree with you. Like this could have been.
The script succeeds as a comedy, I think, in some areas.
Yeah,
it's got some very funny one-liners.
It doesn't do it badly. It's just I do think that does affect, like, it makes it harder to think that like the main plot's that important. But they're trying to make it like some massive, important, super worlds affecting type shit. You know,
it does split the difference because. Let me put it in a different way. So what this reminds me of is like a lot of the kind of caper movies from the 60s and 70s. So like the Rat Pack movies, the original Ocean's 11, you know what I mean? Where if you guys have seen the original Ocean's 11, it's a movie where they're trying to heist this money, and then it gets like in a coffin that gets incinerated, it gets cremated at the end of the film. And so there is a comedic element to what's going on. Or, you know, I like the film The Sting, which also has Robert Redford, by the way, a whole bunch. But what works about that movie is that it is purely a fun caper movie and doesn't have a lot of serious gravity to it in terms of world-spanning events. Like it's a bunch of con men trying to hilariously and complicatedly con a guy out of a large amount of money by using a fake betting operation, right? And it's really a fun film because it's all about the hijinks and the heist and the con artists, right? I think to your point, Thorin, I agree with you, which is that this is trying to deal, because remember, this was only made a couple of years after the Soviet Union's collapse and the entire New World Order that had, you know,
they even use that phrase, I think, at some point, don't they? Yeah. You can say that in the movie, I think.
I mean, because the Alex Jones cameo.
I mean, the Cold War had been going on since like 1945, right? And this was something that entire generations of people had grown up dealing with this split between the USSR and the rest of the world and the Iron Curtain. And so they're trying to show, like, be prescient, as you say, about cyber warfare and cryptography, which is cool and could have been cool. But instead of being a very serious film about those topics and exploring that era, or even being a satire of that era in the way like Doctor Strangelove kind of is, right? It just reverts to being like a worse version of those caper movies from the 60s and 70s that I mentioned. So it just feels weird a lot of the time.
Well, the tone is definitely the issue, because I mean the soundtrack for this movie is really good. It's like it's building tension. But you know, it reminded me of almost like, I'm trying to think of some of the other movies. It had like a Usual Suspects kind of feel to it, where every scene is da 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 da, but there's no tension in these scenes because it's wisecracking Robert Redford, and you know, the stakes are pretty low, really, or not expressed in a way where you're invested, and the humor really does undercut the tension a lot of the time. I felt like, at no point did I believe like Robert Redford was ever in mortal danger. At no point did I really feel that, he was like an almost noir-esque character who was out of his depth, chasing shadows, which I think is what they were going for at points,
Yeah.
because they're trying to make this world seem, quite deliberately opaque, because that is what it is meant to be. It is meant to be like, this is spycraft. Who do you trust? Healthy paranoia. And I didn't get any of that. In fact, I'll just point to one scene and then we can do the plot rundown. But there was a moment in the movie and it just totally took me out of it. I was just starting to get into it and it took me out of it again. And it was the scene where Sidney Poitier and Robert Redford go to do the pickup for this job they were sort of, co-opted into doing. And they're meant to be getting a check, but as they're doing it, Sidney Poitier, classic Deus Ex Machina, this one, he reads a newspaper and realizes that one of the people involved has been murdered, and then he starts going over to Robert Redford. Hey, your mother is on the phone. It's your mother. And Robert Redford like turns around and goes like, and then looks back at them, looking ridiculously shifty and nervous, and goes, "My mother is old," and then like walks away. And it's like, if these were real spies,
well, he looks back like,
yeah, exactly.
Oh,
like
it is ridiculous. I know,
and it's like,
she's old.
the moment that happens, they just pull out the fucking gun and just blow him away. Like that's it. You've been made. He dies instantly in that scene. Yeah. But obviously they get away. There's a car chase, etc. So I mean, look, the problem with this was it never really committed to the premise, because I don't think this movie was conceived as being a post-Cold War drama. It was really conceived, as Christopher says, as being a caper movie, but it lacks the humor and the kind of, levity for that. And while simultaneously trying to be like, it does have some pretty, I don't want to say realistic hacking scenes, but it just shows you a computer screen. Right. It's pretty boring. It's pretty dry at points. And you go, okay, well, which fucking film is this? Is this Ocean's 11 or is it The Motherfucking Conversation? You need to choose.
It's really too bad, because when it's actually at its most comedic, it's really quite entertaining. Like, I actually think that the Marty McDonnell sequence where she's trying to seduce that guy to get him to say the words for the voice pattern recognition is like actually a great moment. And it's super funny the way they jankily splice together the analog tape to get the voice pattern so they can get into the building. And then even all the stuff with the ridiculous stuff with the blind guy, driving the van. Like, it's pretty funny. And I just wish all of the film had been like that.
Whoa, go left. My left, right. Go right. What? It's okay.
Yeah, look, again, there are moments in this, there's little bits that kind of made me, push air out of my nostrils. And, the opening bit with the fucking, the alarm's always the green wire, insta-cut into the lights going out. Little bits like this are funny. Robert Redford obviously is just a master one-line deliverer. He's always, his dry delivery is like, in particularly later in his career, it's kind of what he's become a bit known for, I would say, in the sense that, he's been in like Marvel movies and stuff now. And I can't remember, what was the name of the one where he plays an old bank robber? It's like actually low-key a good film. I'm gonna look it up super quick now.
Company You Keep or something? Which one's this you talking about?
Yeah, let me. Robert Redford's filmography is just fucking so long. He just will not stop.
He's also done loads, even until recently. People don't know.
The Old Man and the Gun, The Old Man and the Gun, which came out in like 2018. He's really good at delivering like sarcastic, dry one-liners, and he's perfect at that type of delivery here. But the problem is, as I said, how can I ever believe that this guy is truly in trouble? How can I ever believe this guy feels afraid? Keep in mind, he's been living a secret life all this time, right? After, and like you would think the last thing you want to do is draw attention to yourself, but he's stupid, sexy Robert Redford, isn't he? So he's fucking delivering all these one-liners.
I do have a counter to all of this, but I'm gonna have to wait for Monty to tell me the fucking movie like an idiot. Like,
damn.
Because that's what the point is. You just read out the plot, so go ahead and do it, so I can rebuttal some of that.
Well, I think it's important to do, Thorin, so that people who haven't necessarily seen the film can catch up on the topic of conversation.
I'm doing it at the beginning of the fucking episode, then, not like right. Have you finished all your points, Richard? Right now, let's introduce the movie. Like, what's that fucking format? I want that for fucking tone that's off.
I think we gotta bait people in with some dynamic conversation first, though.
Well, actually, the one thing you'll find out later that I agree with Richard is I am sick and tired of bait and switches. Like, it's so obvious. Like, in this one, the joke is like by the end they're like, well, I've got the little screw that you need to make it work. Though, got that too. It's like they're just doing a series of Matryoshka doll bait and switches by the end. So go on, hit us with the premise. Come on.
All right. So we have these two gentlemen, Martin and Cosmo, and the film starts with them being like college students using reel-to-reel computers in the 1970s, I guess, in order to make bank transfers illegally, right? Because their idea is they're redistributing the wealth, right? It actually is a very communist concept. So we kind of start with them, in fact, potentially, since this is kind of a Cold War movie, being at least communist sympathizers. And the cops catch them, arrest Cosmo. Martin gets off by fleeing to Canada and becoming a fugitive because he was going out for pizza when the cops came, blah, blah, blah. All right, so many years later, in present day, which is the early 90s, Martin has created his own basically security team. So what they do is they test bank security, or they get hired by clients to try and break into things. And they have a bunch of course, the typical caper experts, including a blind guy who's super good at using sound, and I guess was like kind of a phone freak.
Location, which everybody knows when you go blind. The first thing you do is
Daredevil,
get that light power.
Yeah, Daredevil.
That's just it, like, ridiculous, of course.
It is ridiculous. So he's like a super powered blind guy. River Phoenix, who is there as being like the young person, I guess. Sidney Poitier.
To be fair as well, like
literally his whole character is supposed to be like, he's a young guy, but that means he hasn't met girls yet, and he's all things like, can I just get a date? Like, because that was like a real trope in Hollywood guys
Phoenix,
back in the day.
By the way, like imagine this is how mental this film is. It's like, right, okay, we need a nerdy incel. We need a nerdy incel, someone who can't get laid. River Phoenix, largest 90s heartthrob at the time, shall we? Yeah. What the fuck are you doing? Like,
it is.
And then we have Sidney Poitier, who is, of course, the ex-CIA guy. So the ex-government guy with, of course, a dark and mysterious past as to why he's working privately with this security firm right now. We have Dan Aykroyd. What would you say his job is, like doing the tech?
Yeah, he's the tech guy, but the tech guy that also, like, basically they managed to make a character that just is Dan Aykroyd, right? Because there's a bit in this movie where Dan Aykroyd's giving out some piece of equipment, like a surveillance equipment, and he goes, and this is what they used to fake the moon landing. So, and it's like,
slash conspiracy nuts. Which is Dan Aykroyd.
Does believe. Yeah,
he nails that role. Yeah, completely. Yeah, of course. Yeah, and JFK, like, all that shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, literally, it just is him. So, I mean, Dan Aykroyd plays Dan Aykroyd.
And Mary McDonnell plays Robert Redford's character, Martin's, Flame. And so, effectively, he then... The basic thrust of this is they get hired to steal this by who they think is the U.S. government, to steal this magic box from a mathematician. And it turns out that this magic box is actually computer code that can instantly break into anything, like, I don't know, the Federal Reserve or the national power grid, these kind of, it could just hack anything. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
And then when they attempt to deliver it to the government, they find out, oh, it's not really the government who hired them, because of course they didn't check who it actually was and just believed that they were the government for some reason. That doesn't seem like anything any of those characters would ever do.
Security firm, by the way. Yeah, perfect. Hire these guys.
So it turns out that Cosmo, the guy who was arrested at the beginning of the movie, didn't really die in prison because, shocker, he made friends with the mafia, and then now he is working for the mafia. He stole the black box so he could follow up on his and Martin's dream of creating a new world order and moving all the money around and controlling things via cybersecurity. He is working in a fake toy factory that is actually a mob front, and then they go on heist number 2 where they try and get the box back, and that's it. That's the movie.
Yes. Here's where I will rebuttal some of what Richard said about the premise of the movie. Because here's the thing. I'm totally open to the idea, by the way. This might not have translated to anyone else. But to me, I think specifically because I was very interested as a young man in this time period in things like cryptography, computer hacking, programming, that emerging world. That was actually, to me, the most exciting thing. To me, that was the new world. That was the new vista that was opening of human imagination, what we were going to accomplish in the world. I have to say, a lot of my opinions have changed on that, but essentially it meant that I'd read loads of books about real life hackers. And here's the part that I don't think the movie is explicit enough in, which is that thing you're saying about the idea of like, what's the stakes? Like, essentially, why would we be really worried that like what, right? Here's what people won't realize is one of the things the movie hints at, but isn't explicit enough about, is that whole setup at the beginning of the movie that someone was like a hacker, but notice they're not a hacker of just a malicious person. They're not like holding something hostage or trying to steal info. What they're trying to do is it's some sort of like, let's say like misguided, good intention. Like they're trying to be like a revolutionary for the world in a cool way. Remember in this scenario, they're like trying to make a donation from one person to, like, in this case, politically, they think obviously the Black Panthers are good. This is why this sort of movie is a very of its time film that they're presented as like a heroic force. So they're going to donate money from this one individual to the Black Panthers, for example. And that's like their way of changing the world, right? There were a lot of hackers, if people don't know, in the early days, that it was nothing to do with the criminal element. It was about like essentially things like challenging yourself mentally and seeing things like, could you break certain encryptions and could you get into certain places that you couldn't? And it was about the intellectual stimulation and the challenge of it, right? And the problem you had was in the 90s, when computers became enormous business and things like the internet started to become more serious. Remember, the internet guys literally began as America's fucking like defense network, like fucking communication system. So already you can imagine if you do anything illegal on it, the military are going to be all over it. And the problem you had was the early hackers who got arrested, when they would go to the court, this is where the American court system being so like antagonistic was unfortunately incredibly harmful, because what would happen was the prosecution, like every prosecution lawyer, at least in a film, goes for the hardest possible sentence, right? And the problem you would have was these judges knew nothing about computers. And so they were getting told that like everyone who ever hacked into anything like vaguely government based, they were essentially told like, treat this as like the worst, most dangerous spy in the world. And there were famous cases like Kevin Mitnick's the most famous one, where they were telling the judge stuff like, if he can even ever access a telephone or any electronics, he can launch nuclear missiles. So these people, by the way, weren't just put in prison. They were put in prison on insane federal charges, because they also, by the way, used to do shit like when you hack, say that like your signal went over federal lines. So suddenly now you're doing federal crimes too. And they would put you in prison for like 30 years, even though, look, you're going to get out for good behavior because you're a fucking nerd. But they would do stuff like give you no computer access, and essentially you'd be in sort of like a semi like isolation scenario. So the point is, back then, the stakes if you got caught were huge. But here's where it's so difficult in that world, because almost everyone who was good at that sort of security work was the hacker at one point in time. The joke was, in the 90s, Monty, you either went to prison, or sometimes the members of the same group that were the ones that turned like state's evidence, they all become the security network people. Like they all become like literally the people who made all the backdoor technology and Trojan horse and stuff in the 90s became the people who then did all the like literally this work, like in the movie, where you get hired to test everyone's security and make sure it can't be defeated. And the reason why I bring this up is because that's why actually the stakes at this time of when this film comes out would be way higher than even before. Like now this wouldn't be like, well, if you just come in, you know, you get your warrant, we'll give you a couple of years. No, this would be like where they would send you up the river, as it were. And then the other part to understand is this. The part I actually think isn't, even though they show it, they don't explain. This is where some things do need exposition. You know, later in the film, the Cosmo character shows him, like, the way I'm going to cause you pain is I'm going to set up a really complicated through all these mega databases where it's just going to lead back to you. Like, it's going to lead, like, the fingerprints are going to be found to be your alias. Now I'm going to change your alias on, like, the FBI's main database or whatever. And essentially that's the part that's they don't hit hard enough, because that's what's different, Richard. In the 70s, you really could go out for pizza, and as long as you don't go back in that building and you run and change your name, no one will ever find you. It's like when we were talking about Dog Day Afternoon. I don't think people will actually get in Dog Day Afternoon that if they had just got out before all the police and media came, there was actually a higher than 0% chance they get away with it, guys. They really could potentially have just blended back into the crowd and gone, and not enough people recognize you. And if you're lucky, there's no footage of you, right? That was possible in like 70s to 80s to 90s. Once you get to like 90s to 2000s, guys, like this is the era where the point they're making is now there's like global surveillance. Once you're in databases and once they change information, that will haunt you forever. Like, remember, in this world now, you can now never have like credit card. If your photo, eventually they're going to get the AI technology to see the faces. So actually, that's the thing I think they're also trying to hint at, is essentially not only is this like the stakes have gone way up in this guy's own life based on the original crime, but I'll even add this last detail in there, which is if his main bad guy, enemy, antagonist, the other super hacker hadn't have died. By the way, there's the nightmare fuel. Imagine having a mega hacker with the ability to crack anything, and then their whole mission is to fuck your life up. Dude, they could just keep changing you in databases forever. They could just keep fucking with if they're not actually trying to out you, if they just hack it in to just change your info, they could literally ruin your life on a level I don't think a random person's even thinking of. Like, they could do the worst possible damage to you.
No one knows where Martin Bryce is, do they? But what if this indicated an alias?
Don't do it, Cos.
And then obviously, I say it hints into all the political stuff. By the way, I actually think that part should have had way more. Is, you know, the discussion that you're having between Ben Kingsley's character and the Robert Redford one about things like, this is what we believed in when we were young men. You could have done so much more with that. That part actually could have been fire, because I even thought that part had a very, very interesting underlying thing they never explored, which is this. You might like this, Richard. One thing they do in Hollywood films is you do have to stick to very, very specific, like, American morality and political ideas of expedience. You're not allowed to ever really like be too subversive. So what you have to do in a Hollywood movie is this: you put all your subversive straight fire commentary in the bad guy's mouth, because explicitly he's the bad guy, therefore he's wrong. And when he's defeated at the end, that's taken to mean that his ideas didn't work. Because, mate, what I actually think is the stupidest part of this film actually is how the Robert Redford character just immediately keeps dismissing what the Cosmo guy's saying. Like, that guy's saying very interesting points about this is what we didn't we literally believe in using this technology to make everyone equal and to change the world. And he's making all these mega points, and then all the guy's doing is just going like, you're just crazy, man. You're bloody crazy. Like, he's actually not even engaging with the idea. And it's like, that's the one part I didn't get.
Destroy all records of ownership. Think of it, Marty. No more rich people, no more poor people. Everybody's the same. Isn't that what we said we always wanted?
Guys, you haven't gone crazy, have you?
Who else is going to change the world, Marty? Greenpeace?
You are crazy.
Because I actually thought you could have done something really interesting there about like, wait a minute, didn't the Robert Redford character in a way sort of sell everything out, just have a cushy life and not, you know, get too serious? Didn't he in some ways violate like whatever their revolutionary spirit was? Whereas actually, even if you don't like the Ben Kingsley character, you can't deny he has done literally what they were claiming they were trying to do. Like, he's got the super MacGuffin now that, even though, by the way, you could get into this, even though it might be a horrific idea in reality to make everyone equal, he can do it now, boys. He can actually like remove all property records, like he says. He can make everyone's bank accounts equal. Like, that in itself could have been an enormous fucking part. But I will say, I don't think they explored that part well. To me, essentially, this is why you can see why I like the movie. I think it's just a flawed film, essentially. I think what it was hinting at was really interesting, but maybe I was getting more out of that than other people were.
No. I think it is good. And I think to your point about what Cosmo is trying to say, it is wild that it doesn't go into Robert Redford's head, because they even set up his character as feeling very distinct guilt because he thinks Cosmo died in prison and he was on the lam in Canada and actually had to change his name to, and the entire, you know, the fulcrum of the plot is basically the government is telling him he must go get this device back in order to clear his name because they know that he was doing this shit in the 60s and 70s. So he's going to get got in for the same crime that Cosmo was originally. And to have this moment where he's not even tempted by that power, I think is very weird. It's very weird to not even be like, well, what could we do with this? Because Cosmo clearly still wants him as a partner in this endeavor.
This is so criminal, Monty, is like Ben Kingsley does an awesome job in this role. And by the way, even though it's initially presented as like, it's just your enemy, actually they do make it from these speeches. Like there's a more depth to his character, clearly, isn't there? They're trying to hint at something like that.
When I was in prison, I learned that everything in this world, including money, operates not on reality,
But the perception of reality.
Yeah, that's the part I just didn't get, Monty, is why he can't even, like, because you'd think he could at least, bear in mind they're supposed to be friends. You could at least do the scene where it's sort of like, yeah, I sort of agree with you, man. You have sort of made a point, but then here's why I can't do, like, I don't know, I'm with the Mary woman or whatever the fuck. Yeah, you could do some angle, but they don't even entertain it. They treat it like it's frivolous.
It's also that, Cosmo shows back up, and we know what's been previously established is we know Martin feels guilt from not being arrested and for Cosmo dying in prison. And he's not even like happy to see him really or willing to talk to him. Like, I feel like if you went through that and somebody you thought was dead shows back up and actually, wants to continue the work that you did and your idealist work when you were college kids, like there could have been an interesting thrust to that idea too, which is like, hey, didn't you grow out of that? Don't you realize it's not plausible now? They could have even gone that direction, right? Like this was something we did in our youthful idealistic phase, but now we need to, this is too powerful. The technology has gone too far at this point in time. It's 30 years later or 25 years later or whatever it is, right? And now we need to really think about what this means for the future of the world, and we can't hold on to this basically super weapon. But it doesn't go there. It doesn't go there.
And just to jump in on what Duncan was saying, there is a definite shift in how these movies kind of approach the topics they're talking about once there is an acceptance and understanding that we essentially live in a panopticon, right? I mean, like you look at late 90s media and you probably, like, just a few movies off the top of my head, you've got like Enemy of the State, Snake Eyes, Truman Show, Matrix, obviously, Minority Report. All of a sudden, there is this shift in movies that make it abundantly clear that you're always being watched, and it's super difficult for the protagonist to evade those who would, come capture him without taking these like extreme measures. And essentially, it is a reflection of the times in which we live. There's cameras everywhere. You're being monitored. We have digital footprints that can't be erased. All our necessary activity is tracked. Obviously, when you go back to a time where that isn't true, there is this different type of tension and different type of stories because it is possible for Robert Redford to literally change only his second name and just walk away from being this insane hacker. But I mean, for me, the problem I sort of had with the movie ultimately was that, as I said, it just never felt that the stakes were that high. Like, even when Robert Redford got knocked out and brought back, and the big reveal with Ben Kingsley, Cosmo's still alive, and he's alluding to the fact that, look, I'm going to ruin your life and cause you pain. But there's a hint there, like, or maybe, and obviously, the way the movie ends, which we'll talk about, he still feels something for his friend for the good old days. But it felt almost like when the Big Lebowski gets knocked out. And it's like
they do make it almost comedic, don't they? Because they keep doing it over and over again. I know what you mean.
That's what I mean.
Which is weird, by the way, because actually the character that's doing the beat could have been a very menacing character if you did set it up properly.
Well, he is.
That guy's scary, yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I mean, like, Ben Kingsley himself says it. Like, Robert Redford goes, you should get that guy checked for rabies. And he goes, he can't have rabies. Only warm-blooded mammals can get that. Implying that this is a cold-blooded killer. Yeah, exactly. And so, and it's accurate. Yet this is the guy who comedically keeps bonking Robert Redford over the head.
It's what he does that line when he goes, "Oh, are you up? What are you doing up?
Are you up? What are you doing up? Bonk."
What are you doing up?
And it literally felt like the Big Lebowski, like when he's fucking when he's been drugged.
That's true. Yeah,
That's a good.
Like,
That's a good comparison.
it's true.
Yeah. So this was it was like, okay, let's look at another movie with Robert Redford, right? Like we've seen Spy Game, yeah.
Of course.
I haven't
Yeah?
seen Spy Game. No.
Okay, right. Well, but
It's a good film. You should definitely watch it.
yeah, Spy Game was basically like, you know how like everyone was saying like Brad Pitt was the next Robert Redford and Robert Redford was still acting and this is like the early 2000s. So Brad Pitt and Robert Redford do a movie together and it's called Spy Game and it's like this
I'll
movie.
give you a premise, Monty. You will actually love this movie. Essentially, because
Yeah.
like he says, it's like a mentor-protege movie. What they do is Brad Pitt literally is the agent in the field doing a mission, and Robert Redford is the old, like, semi-retired, you've been furloughed to an
the
office
handler.
spy, and but he has to try and help the guy on
cool.
site via only being in, like, the headquarters of, like, whatever it is, CIA, NSA, or whatever. And so essentially, it's like he's doing, like, office politics and minor things, while the real life... So it's like it does both levels of spies. Like, it's sort of like the John Le Carre type spy, and then also like the Mission Impossible spy, but merged into one. It's actually a good film. You'd enjoy it, Monty, for sure.
Yeah,
Oh, it's Tony Scott
the-
too. I see, who did The Hunger, what we
Yes.
did previously on the show. Ridley Scott's brother. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, this is like one of these movies that's kind of fallen by the wayside. It's actually better than people sort of remember it.
Yeah, it's
but
good.
it's like tonally, it never shifts. It's like the stakes are high. Brad Pitt's in danger. Robert Redford's got to use his expertise to get back into action and help get Brad Pitt out and all of this stuff. And if they fuck it up, this is going to create an international incident. I think it's like China are the big bads in this one, if I remember. And and it's going to have these serious ramifications, and they're going to be denied. And it's like you watch that movie and you go, oh shit, like holy fuck, I don't want stupid sexy Brad Pitt to get caught, and I don't want stupid sexy Robert Redford who's just come out of action to help his fucking protege get caught. And it's like, you understand the stakes. This will be a total disaster. Every scene is undercut with that tension. If at any point anyone flops, it's all going to go bad. This movie, unfortunately, it cannot walk a consistent line on what it's trying to do. And I think there are some scenes in this which would have had like some monumental like tension and some like real high stakes drama, but they didn't commit to it. They couldn't commit to it. Instead, what they wanted to commit to ultimately was this idea of like, it is a caper movie. It's a caper movie with an incredible ensemble cast, and we're all having fun, and we all get our scenes, and then we're going to get to the end. And by the way, here's another fucking bait and switch. Again, as if no one ever has thought to open a box in NatSec, and it does the little twist at the end where, yay! Remember at the start? All of those good causes that we were hacking and giving money to. Yay, we're doing that at the end. We've come full circle. Yay.
Even though that's what Cosmo wanted to do, and Martin said, no, Cosmo, you can't do that. And then he just decides to do it anyway. He's the most fickle motherfucker on the planet.
Oh no! In some ways, by the way, the Martin character just is a representative of the U.S. government, where they go, "Hey, it's unfair for everyone to do this. I'll just secretly do it myself, but you can't stop me though. So I'm the good guy. It's okay. When I do it, it's cool though. When I steal the money,
totally.
No, we've got to adjust that part because I'm with you, Richard. Right? The entire film can't multiple times rest on the idea. Right? This is why it doesn't work, Richard. It just doesn't work. The idea that like when you're given a box, you don't ever look in the box. The reason why that doesn't work is because, bro, I grew up in the northeast of England where they count the individual coins you give them when you pay for anything. Like, they will never, ever be skimmed 1 pence on, like, a fucking chocolate bar, mate. So the idea that, like, you've just been handed the ultimate MacGuffin of all time, that if you successfully got in your hands now, you'll never need anything else, you're going to crack everything, you will be God, basically. Should I check? No, I'll just trust that it's in there. And you know what? Now that I've got it, I'm even going to give you my farewell speech. I'll never see your character again. So if you've got it, you're absolutely dicking me right now. But you know what? I won't check. Let's just listen. If there's one thing we can all do, guys, in this movie is trust each other.
Yeah, I don't.
What are you talking about? Oh, by the way, that's also why I will say, I do think, even though they did keep sprinkling it in the movie, they wanted people to actually take some of the interpretation I took, I think, of like the whole too many secrets thing, because that was also supposed to be about the idea of like, the intelligence community. But the problem with that, again, is unfortunately, they do in a sort of a ham-fisted way introduce these ideas and then not really explore them that much, unfortunately. Like I said, to me, the seeds were there to do something really interesting. I'm with you, though. The first thing you would do, literally, with this film is tone down some of the comedy elements. You know, that's the part that does overpower the other parts, I think, because they keep, like I said, trying to make it like lighthearted all of a sudden.
Yeah, and I just never.
The bait and switch is crazy, though. Dude, doesn't he bait and switch 3 different times? I think it's 3, right?
Yeah, there's like 3 bait and switches in the film, I think, and you're just
It's
like,
mental, innit?
yeah, like of all. Like so I imagine like I'm a spy.
By the
right?
way, if you're a viewer, I hope to God by the last one you did know that one was a bait and switch. If you didn't know the last one was, then you will never make it in this life. Like you're just done. You're cold.
I'm a spy. I enroll in spy school, right? And I'm there, and I'm all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I got me clipboard, me notepad, me pen, and it's like, day 1, the bait and switch. Like, surely that's just how that works. You go in. Sometimes you could give someone a box, say something is in the box, and maybe they won't check. But I also imagine at the end of that lesson, don't always rely on this, especially not 3 times in a 90-minute runtime, because that's fucking implausible. I imagine that's what you get taught in spy school, right? But like that's literally what happens in this film.
The plot it does feel like, you know, he wrote the rest of the script. It was 95% done. He had 5 minutes to turn it in. Like, oh shit, what am I going to do? Fucking bait and switch 2 more times.
About it, you set up the idea that this is a super team of ultra elite hacksaws that can do anything, spread out across their skills. You have the blind dude with echolocation. You have River Phoenix is the world's most implausible incel. It's like the Avengers for hacking, right? And yet, what do we come up with? Should we give him an empty box and hope he doesn't open the lid? If he opens the lid, we're all dead. Like, yeah, I got nothing else. Like, fuck this. Like, come on, guys. Like, can't you just sit down in the writer's room and just be like, nah, really, for the denouement, we got to do something else. Could he make a fake machine? Could he give him it, but it's got some like code in it that when he goes to use it, it breaks down and actually does all the things that fucking
there you go.
Martin wanted to do. Like, there's a million. I mean, again, we're the fucking script doctors every single time. There's a million things you could have done. Like, he could have gone and like do the great equalizer. You have this tense scene where like Ben Kingsley's going like, ha, 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 now I will take away your bank balance, right? And as he puts it in the USB drive,
it's
like,
all the mafia's money's just gone to Greenpeace or something.
Yeah, exactly. And then some rogue code sucks all the mafia Swiss bank accounts, and all of a sudden Greenpeace are like, yes, we can save another whale. Yes, they're all like, you know, like you could have done anything, but you did the old bait and switch for the third time.
The hilarious part of this too is like the next step of ramifications at the end of the film is obviously that they just go get the box, right? Because they know the U.S. government knows who has the box. They know they don't have the box, so how do they think they can hide?
Don't think about Sneakers 2. Don't think about how Sneakers 2. It's just Robert Redford getting tortured by the CIA.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be like 5 minutes later, there's like the National Guard is like outside your door.
The reason it's even worse, that actually is a literal plot hole in the film, and here's why, guys. Because at the end, they even get all those things they trade and exchange, like he's going to go to Europe. Well, obviously, no, that's going to happen, is it? When they realize that you just kept some of the components, they're just going to come back and go, I'm sorry, did you not know how this work? We're not actually the criminals. We can come back anytime. Please now give us that thing, and you're all going to prison. Yeah,
I like to think that the government never opened the box, and they just took it and pounded it into a crate and put it in that warehouse at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Don't need this no more.
It's like, well, we shouldn't open that, just like the Ark of the Covenant. Job's done, boys.
It's absolutely ridiculous. One thing I'll also say as well, this movie would have definitely benefited from some inter-team friction. Like, why couldn't Sidney Poitier, the old CIA guy, have a moment, right? Like, you know,
he did. He had about 10 seconds of not doing the sneak, which is, of course, the word they only use in this fucking film, because no one has ever said a sneak outside of this film, but they just try and make it a thing. So yeah, everybody's like,
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about why couldn't there be like, you know, like you have a room, it's all shadowy, and you know, Sidney Poitier gets a phone call and it's, I don't work for you no more. You know, whatever they call director, you know that. And then like there's a little bit of tension, like just to undercut, because again, it's spycraft. They even do the thing. I hate it. I hate it when they do this in movies, right? There are two cardinal sins you can do with this line. So if the line is ever introduced, trust nobody. You know where this is going, right? if that person then immediately trusts somebody, fuck you. What is happening?
I know.
Like, you have been explicitly told to trust nobody. But also, if you go, trust nobody, but everyone's trustworthy, what is the fucking point of the movie? Why are you even introducing that as a premise? Robert Redford should be living in his fucking eyeballs the entire time. Like, holy shit, can I even trust Sidney Poitier? Like, we have this great relationship, but like, he was on the CIA and they want this box, and they're not even the NSA. Who even are the NSA? What the fuck is Dan Aykroyd talking about? Like, you know what I mean? It should have been like all of these layers, you know, but like, it's just not there. And it's like, in that sense, it's so atypical of a spy movie, because when you sit down for, well, it's like a spy movie and a heist movie, and I don't think it succeeds at either, really. Like, the premise is like a heist is like high tension. How's it going to go wrong? Is it going to go wrong? And the premise of a spy movie is, who can you trust and how are they going to fuck with your shit? You combine spying and heisting, that is rich, so rich for like tension. Think about Mission Impossible, we covered in another episode, right? The job goes wrong and everyone's dead right at the start, right? Who did it? Why am I the only one left? How did this happen? How am I going to investigate it? Who can I trust if I reach out to people to come in from the cold? All of these things are like mega. None of that is here. It's just stupid, sexy Robert Redford and his buddies do the thing. Then they pretend in the middle, oh, we shouldn't really be doing this anymore. And then the movie ends on a happy note where he does all of the things that he officially denounced at various points in the film. And we're all supposed to feel good about it. And also, by the way, as I said, he's just took to a CIA black site and gets cornholed to death. That's the sequel, Sneakers 2. Right? It's such a wild film. It's like, what happened? Like, what is
I'm
this
sorry.
about?
I also just have to talk about the actual heist in this movie, which is so fucking hilariously bad. Like, I was laughing my ass off because remember when we did Mission Impossible, and the core, the apex of the heist is that really iconic scene with Tom Cruise coming down from the ceiling, and you understand the stakes that he can't raise the temperature of the room too high and he can't touch the floor.
Toast. It's brilliant.
So how good that is, right? Or think about other like iconic, heist movies. Like, let's say Entrapment, like The Room with the Lasers, right? Is so iconic. In this film, we get Robert Redford walking really slowly through a room.
He's not even really old at this point. Like
I just
what
like
is happening?
By the way, unironically do a scene where someone goes, hurry! Like, right as he's in the middle, and they just like sort of eye roll, like, bloody hell, I'm in the middle of something here.
Martin, I think you better hurry.
The one thing I can't do is hurry.
By the way, Robert Redford's character could just be red-eyed the whole movie. leave that out. That's my own personal peccadillo for that one.
Like that. That's outrageous.
But I just love how they made this heist movie, and they're thinking to themselves, when he's about to get the mega MacGuffin, how should he do it? Should we have some really complex security thing? No, it's going to be just sitting on his desk, not in a safe. And there's some motion sensors that can be defeated by moving less than 2 inches per second. So he just drops in, and there's just a scene of Robert Redford trying to walk as slowly as possible in the least exciting, least sexy heist climax I have ever seen.
I mean, put it this way, like, how will we evade these high-level security systems? Have you tried tiptoeing? Like, fuck this. It's
you know, the sad thing about that as well is the actual aesthetic of that room looked really dope.
It was cool,
future. It looked quite cool, didn't it? Yeah. I agree. That was whack when you realise, like, because the stupid thing is they don't even have the alarm going off. It is just him moving really slow, like, it goes slower. By the way, I've even written a quote down because there are also some parts in the script where, like, it's almost like these are placeholders that you meant to come back and put something really funny in, and then you didn't, and you just made the movie like that. Like, at the end, when they do that scene where the fucking, like, NSA guy or whatever, whoever it was, FBI, I can't remember which one it is, at the end, it's like, you know, doing all the bargaining with them all. They all want a different thing, right? Obviously, the blind guy, if you remember, his whole thing, like a joke, was like, I just want peace. So he steps forwards. I've actually written this down because it's so fucking bad. Listen to this dialogue, guys. He goes, I want peace on earth and goodwill towards men. Then the Bernard Abbott guy goes, oh, this is ridiculous. And then they go, he's serious. And then it goes, I want peace on earth and goodwill towards men. And then the CIA guy goes, we are the United States government. We don't do that sort of thing. And then the Martin Bishop guy goes, you're just going to have to try. And then the Bernard Abbott guy goes, all right, I'll see what I can do. And then the blind guy goes, thank you very much. That's all I ask. Like, you forgot to put the joke in. What? Where's the gag? The gag is like, no, he's really asking for it, you know, like, oh, well, in that case, I'll just pretend I'm going to do it. Yeah, thanks. Like, what? Bro, like, it's like you could have put a straight fire joke in there, but you forgot. That's a placeholder there. What the hell is that? What is that dialogue? That's so bad, that dialogue. That is really badly done. Whatever.
I mean, listen, I'm going to just bring Roger Ebert in. It's a good time.
What did he get? One star, I'm guessing. Right. He hated on it, did he? Come on.
No, listen, 2.5 out of 4. Right, okay. Which he's rated it higher than I would, but he is so out of pocket in this review. Which
by the way, one thing we really need, I keep forgetting, is with Roger, we need to know what his worst examples are. Because I need like a reference. Like if that's 2.5,
nothing's going to be worse than The Thing. Nothing's going to be worse than The Thing.
Does he have some like outrageous film with like a 4-star, like fucking, I don't know, like fucking what he would be like Ace Ventura or something like? He must have some shit films that are highly rated. Because if he's given this, what does he give like high marks to? Is there any really bad ones he had to say 4 stars? Because I need a reference for where he goes on this. Because he must be into some weird
obviously,
shit.
as I said, he gave The Thing like 0.
Yeah, that shit review. Yeah, exactly.
Star.
Wasn't that mental?
I'm trying to think because I'm looking at like it's so hard to find his 4 stars where because he does give. He gives loads like 0 stars. He's quite known for that, and you can go look up. Here we go. 15 critically acclaimed movies that Roger Ebert.
Holy shit! The first one that came up was 500 Days of Summer.
You know what,
Roger Ebert?
I hate that movie.
From this realm, you were a creature of evil, perpetrating your malicious, malevolent. Holy fuck! 4 stars.
I've got the best example. That proves he is a fucking hack fraud. He gave David Lynch's Blue Velvet 1 star. Like he gave The Usual Suspects 1.5 stars out of 4.
Oh my god,
so mental. That's
like this guy. He gave Clockwork Orange 2 out of 4, and The Elephant Man 2 out of 4, and Fight Club 2 out of 4. This guy's trash. Like he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Anyway, let's get to his review of Sneakers.
Anyway,
By the way, hashtag cancel Roger Ebert because this is so out
He's
of pocket.
dead already.
Yeah. No, mate. That didn't stop them cancelling John Wayne. Right?
Oh, that's true.
Being dead don't mean shit.
By the way, the funniest one, Rich will know this, the funniest one, unironically, is when they were like trying to cancel recently, Monty. You're going to think this is a meme. This is why you can't have parody or satire in the world anymore, Monty. Recently, the Zoomers have been trying to cancel, literally, checks notes, the Marquis de Sade.
Really?
Because they were looking it up like, this is a bit problematic. It's like, bruh. Bruh, what are you saying, bruh? And he's also dead hundreds of years ago.
Wait until the Zoomers discover Georges Bataille in Story of the Eye. If they think Marquis de Sade is bad, wait till they find Bataille.
Who voted for this guy? Anyway, right?
I just looked it up because I was curious. He did give Crash, the fucking horrible movie that won Best Picture, 4 stars.
I mean, listen. I have terrible. I went to see that with a chick, and I have terrible fucking like memories of that movie. I was just locked into the chair while she was weeping next.
Oh, Jesus.
I can't stand this film, and she's loving everything. Oh God, the little girl lives because of the magic bullet. I was like, get me the fuck out. Like, I was like, I was thinking in my mind, it is over between us. Like, but I'll just.
I do appreciate though that, like, for some reason, it's just because we started with the thing. The fact that Roger Ebert, dead, deceased Robert Ebert, will never get to say a word for himself, is the perennial, like, fucking nemesis of this show. And actually, the only conclusion to every film is fuck Roger Ebert.
I'm gonna write a short story.
Even if he gives it, like, even if he gives too many stars, he's an idiot for that. If he gives too few, bloody idiot. I love it.
I'm gonna write a short story, which is like it's a cosmic horror about a film critic from beyond the grave, just giving bad reviews. Right. Anyway, this is so out of pocket. Hashtag cancel Roger Ebert for real. Right. Take Robert Redford's team, which is yet another version of the World War II platoon that always had one of everything. This time, there is the black guy, Sidney Poitier.
That's not bad. That's not a bad.
Hold on. The fat guy, Dan Aykroyd. The blind guy, David Strathairn. The woman, Mary McDonnell. And the kid, River Phoenix. There is not enough useful dialogue to go around for such a large team, and sometimes characters feel like they've been pushed on stage for obligatory scenes that are not really necessary. Well, that's very reductive, Roger Ebert. Describing Sidney Poitier as the black guy, Dan Aykroyd is the fat guy. Hashtag fat shaming. The black guy, ableist much, Roger Ebert.
By the way, if you're a Zoomer, this is also another unfortunate black pill moment where you have to understand that, yes, they actually thought Dan Aykroyd in this movie was comedically fat in Hollywood at the time. I know that's going to be bad for you guys, but like, yeah, that was actually considered really out of pocket back then. He's just like slightly chubby. What are you talking about?
I know. No, but it's like, again, it's like you watch The Goonies and you look at Chunk and you're like, fucking hell, he's a thin kid these days.
He's not even that fat, is he? I know, it's mental, isn't it? It's mental.
Anyway, and then he then goes on to talk about like all the stupid Deus Ex Machina, and he just says that the screenplay gives these characters some interesting things to say. Dan Aykroyd is funny as the conspiracy nut who knows the true story behind everything. The movie is sometimes entertaining, but unlike Dan Aykroyd, thin. So he didn't add that bit. I did, but he did.
That would have been good though. Would have been bad.
Yeah, no. I'm a better writer than Roger Ebert as well. You dead fuck. So you dead hack. So anyway, listen. I mean, like, I think if anything, he's a little bit too generous. Even though I think he's really out of pocket. For me,
I know this is fucked up. But I feel like we have to do a category of like it's called Roger Ebert is a hack, and we pick 4 films that we think are amazing that he gave really bad reviews. I feel like we have to do it because we've just set it up too much. It'd be too good a series when it comes on.
Yeah, and as I said, we need to get like an AI Roger Ebert to just do one little sentence.
True, that would be amazing.
Like, you are wrong, Duncan.
I know.
We'll call it who blames Roger Ebert.
Yeah, nice. I like who blames Roger Ebert. But anyway, so look, I actually think that's really out of pocket because I thought Sidney Poitier was really good in this movie. I mean, Sidney Poitier is good in almost anything.
He's actually underused, like you say, Richard, in this movie. He has like a gravitas that never gets to be applied to anything, does it?
No, certainly the best scenes in the movie for me are the back and forths between Robert Redford and Sidney Poitier. I think bar none. I think even though the dialogue isn't great and they're not given a lot to do.
All these years, even lied to us about your name.
Sorry, okay? I'm sorry, fellas. I'm sorry. But when you're wanted by the feds, you don't exactly go around telling everybody about it, okay?
We are not everybody, Martin. We are your partners. You tell us.
Fine. Exactly why was it you had to leave the CIA?
Ultimately, there's not enough of Ben Kingsley. I think I would have liked to have seen more. I would have liked to have seen a mechanism through which Robert Redford could have been talking to Ben Kingsley the entire time. Like, you know how like Die Hard or Speed, right? What makes those movies great is that the protagonist and the antagonist can keep in constant touch via the mechanics of the walkie-talkies. Same in Speed, pop quiz, hot chat. You know, it's fucking great, right? And because you're even though they're not in the same room, they're learning about each other's motivations, each other's goals. They're able to fuck with each other. They're able to manipulate each other. Ben Kingsley is also great in this movie for like the 3 scenes he's on camera. Believable American accent, like very, very forthright in the delivery of his dialogue, plays off Robert Redford quite nicely. And it's like, there's just not enough of that. I mean, when you consider Sidney Poitier and Ben Kingsley probably do get about as much screen time as Dan Aykroyd, that is fucking criminal. That's the real crime in this. Like none of the other stuff. It's like this. I mean, and even James Earl Jones, his cameo, where it's like, I know, like I just want to see this fantastic cast given a scenery chewing scene. But instead, it is just pretty much Robert Redford. Is Robert Redford, was he contractually obliged to be in every single scene in this movie, by the way? I can't think of a scene he wasn't in the movie. Is there a scene where he's not in the movie?
Yeah, the Mary McDonnell scenes when she's like off trying to get the seduction scene. He's not there in that one.
But that's it, right?
Basically.
It's like basically Robert Redford, because if you look at how this movie got made, by the way, it only got the cast it got because Robert Redford attached himself to the film. Because apparently the writer had been researching post-Soviet stuff after war games. And then basically the script that made its way to Robert Redford. Robert Redford said, yeah, I'll do that. And then the director said, oh, I've always wanted to direct Robert Redford. And then all the actors like, wow, I've always wanted to do a movie with Robert Redford. And so one at a time, they all like fall in. But it's like, I just think Robert Redford just turned into fucking Poochie out of The Simpsons and just said, right, if Robert Redford's not on screen, all the other characters must be asking, where is Martin Bryce? And we just have to... And it's like, he's in every single fucking scene to the detriment of everybody else. And I don't even hate Robert Redford, but this is some fucking narcissistic bullshit, dudes.
By the way, I will say a few things I don't like about this film because I've probably been too even-handed the other way to counterbalance Richard, but there are some things that are trash. Like, there are things they do which are just Hollywood tropes to make people who aren't that smart think, yeah, I'm smart too, which is like, for example, the scene where he just goes, C-Tech astronomy. That doesn't even mean anything. Let me just get Scrabble things and just do anagrams until I find out. Because here's the thing about that, guys. There's 2 elements. One, why would you do that? And then 2, if I'm going to fuck with you, I'm probably not going to put like secret anagrams that if you figure it out, you can start to figure out how I'm fucking with. Like, why insert that detail? Like, you know what? That's just a stupid Hollywood contrivance. Then similarly, there's that scene. There's 2 of them that are just mad inappropriate because again, this is, remember, it's supposed to be like spycraft where we're all going to prison or we're going to die if we do this wrong. So when you're trying to get that woman who's like the Czech scientist to go and like not tell on you for being in the office of that guy, and you're all making gags like, and remember to give him head all the time. Like, you wouldn't listen. That sort of jovial Porky's-esque prank call humor wouldn't be part of like, bro, like, why are you doing that? Remember, if he actually just says to her and give him head all the time, you could just blow the whole thing. You could just literally blow the whole thing. And by the way, like a secret device gets in the hands of criminals that they can like decode the whole world's thing just because you had to say like, give him head all the time, like,
You know?
And give him head whenever he wants.
Give him help. Be a beacon.
And then also the other one is similarly, this is one thing I actually can't abide by because if everyone knows this rule of being a spy, etc., or if you've just ever seen the fucking movie The Great Escape, once you're out, it's like selling something. Once you've sold it, you don't keep selling because then they might change their mind. That scene where she's actually finagled completely the guy to say the voice activation line, but then she has to just throw in, that's my last computer date, and then that guy goes, wait a minute, because you don't know this, but I'm a computer guy, and computers would never make a mistake. So wait a minute, computer paired you with her. By the way, that's it really badly how Tinder works now, but it's paired you with it. No, wait, this must be. It's like, so just because she said that stupid line, I love the Great Escape, like thank you or whatever, like whatever that fucking line, the classic one is, you're like, you've just done that. You've Great Escaped us. You can't. You dumb idiot. Why have you said anything? No, those 2 I couldn't abide by. Those 2 were mad plot holes. I don't know why they put those in. Why put that in?
Well, again, we get back to the fundamental problem with the movie, and that is that it just doesn't know what it wants to be. It's like, look, it's trying to be a comedy,
yes,
which it does. As I said, I don't think it fails as a comedy. I think there are bits that are like, some clever one-lines and some good scenes, and probably one of the best things about this is like the comedic one-liners actually.
Yeah.
In the script. I think.
I mean, I'll give you an example. There's a banger, another one I've got for you. Here's a quote for you. This is actually a banger. It's exactly like you said, Richard. Obviously, Robert Redford is amazing at being super amiable and affable and then delivering a cool one-liner, right? Here's the best example. So the Cosmo guy goes, think about how good this is again. He sets up like a great point, but then listen to the one-liner. He goes, what's wrong with this country, Marty? Money. You taught me that. Evil defense contractors had it. Noble causes did not. Politicians are bought and sold like so much chattel. Our problems multiply. Pollution, crime, drugs, poverty, disease, hunger, despair. We throw gobs of money at them. The problems always get worse. Why is that? Because money's most powerful ability is to allow bad people to continue doing bad things at the expense of those who don't have it. Robert Redford's character just goes, I agree. Now, who did you say you work for again? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Because he works for the fucking mafia, doesn't he? Like, it's actually a banger line. What a fucking banger.
No, it turns out he works for ESL.
He goes, listen, the joke is he should actually just go, look, Marty, I've got fucking kids and a mortgage. What do you like?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I also think that they didn't even explore the ends justify the means of that, which is that the mob helped him get out of prison, right? Because he was helping people in, and he did that, and now he has the box, and which means he can get rid of his mob connections potentially. And so the question is, did all of the things he did for the mob that got him out of prison and got him to the point of getting the box, does that justify him acquiring this box in order to start the new world order, right? But we don't explore that.
Talk about. There is one thing we didn't talk about, which is why I kind of alluded to the fact that before I actually did feel like there was almost a sincerity to the Cosmo character that was dismissed because he's the bad guy and we're in a Hollywood movie, which is why isn't he actually right at the end when he says like you're the one who like what he's making a greater point about, by the way, guys, also is like social unfairness. Like obviously there are people who are cool and people who aren't cool, and people who are attractive and people who aren't attractive, and people who everything seems to come easily, and people who everything's a struggle. And the problem is when he makes that point of like, why do you always get away with everything? Why do you get the girl? Why do you get the way you don't get put in prison like me? You get all the money, etc. There is a point to that. Like, why does the Robert Redford character? That's the joke at the end of the movie. You're right, Monty. Why does he get to get it all and get the girl, and then also do like the criminal, semi-criminal stuff that he's denouncing this guy for wanting to do? Because that part is actually a bit fucked up. Like, I actually do agree that like one element that's weird. Like, think about how weird this setup is. The Robert Redford character, like Richard said, never really has the tension he's ever going to lose. He just doesn't know how he's going to win. That's the problem, right? And he even has that smugness to him where you know he is going to win somehow. And the joke is just because he's the good guy TM. Not because he's smarter than the Cosmo guy or more, just because he's the good guy, so he's going to win. So one part I did find mental was like the whole sequence really late in the film where he's showing this guy, like, I'm going to now change like your FBI record or whatever. So you're essentially absolutely fucked with every law enforcement in the world. And he turns to him and goes like, and then that guy goes like, come on, man, don't do that. And he goes, pain? Yeah. And he goes, yeah. And it's like, bro, like Robert Redford, you still haven't understood what this film is at the moment. That character went to prison in a scenario where you should have gone as well. You didn't even keep up, and you thought I heard he just died. Like, you weren't even checking up on him or trying to like ever contact him. And then he's finally made his way, like Bane, out of the pit of prison, become a successful figure on his own. He's now in a position to do damage to you. And you actually think just going like, come on, man, that's not cool. That's just going to make him stop. Like, what? Bro, it's like he's actually right. The bad guy is actually right. You actually are some guy just fucking walking on water with a silver spoon in your mouth. It's like, la, la, la. Everything just works out for me. It's all just works out in the end for Robert Redford. Like, it has, that part is actually a bit weird.
He
has
no empathy. He has no empathy for Cosmo.
Weird,
doesn't even really apologize or try and talk to him about his circumstances. He never even bothered to, like, as you say, check in on him or see how he's doing. He just ditched him. Like, it's fucked up, man. Yep. It's really fucked up.
Yeah, which again, it's like, you know, remember Robert
you could have done so much with that. Like, same as by the way with the love interest. You're hitting the same shit. You're hitting like you haven't contacted him for like 20 years. But again, it's smoothed over in a second. You could have done so much more. There's what you could have done, Richard, right there. There's your inter-team fucking thing. Shouldn't there be more friction between him and the woman, or him and, like you say, the Sidney Poitier? You had so much ripe material to do something with it.
Like maybe someone on the team, like, you know, one of the maybe it's River Phoenix's character or someone finds out, oh, you just fucking sold them down the river and we're all working with you.
Perfect.
You know, and it's like, well, you know, I don't want to work with somebody that fucking cuts his boys loose. You know what I mean? And because the other interesting part of the dynamic is in Cosmo's mind, at least, although I'm trying to remember, I don't know. I watched it a few days ago, so I don't know if it was explicitly stated. But Cosmo thinks Robert Redford pushed him into it. Essentially, he says, like, you put me up to it. We did it together, and then like you walk away and you don't get in trouble, and I do, and I go down. And it's like, actually, that kind of like, that kind of idea is like, there's a callback to the notion of peer pressure, because that's what Robert Redford does to the team. He says, we're going to do this mission, and, we're doing it essentially to keep me out of prison. So it's like, it should be a detail somewhere in the film. Wait, the last guy you fucking put up to doing stuff was theoretically died in prison? Yeah, I'm good, actually. Miss me with that shit, stupid, sexy Robert Redford. But again, they all fall in line, even when they have their own motivations. Their own motivations just happen to serve Robert Redford. Somebody goes, I only do it for the money, so let's just do it then. And it's like, well, this, how does that work out for you? How's all the money now at the end? You know what I mean? It's like, you haven't made any like insane rewards out of this stuff. It's like, it's wild. It's just so crazy to me that keep in mind, there's a fucking double. Well, no, there's 3 murders in this movie, but there's like a double murder that happens on camera, like at the halfway point of the film about.
Oh, the one on the Russian guy, yeah, sure.
Yeah, and
the Russian
like
diplomat
again,
or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, Robert Redford's just like, I'll walk slowly away from this as well. Like,
by the way, that scene, actually, I'd forgotten that. That scene's mad gangster, where that cop just takes with like a black glove, that like fucking gun, just turns around. Because in that scenario, what you're supposed to, what you're supposed to believe is like it's showing that the old world order doesn't work anymore. Like obviously the Russians would have had protection, wouldn't they? They'd be like, we're our own people, you can't start a nuclear war. But then they just show that like actually, fuck, this guy was going to cap him and blame you, basically. By the way, they don't do enough with that either. The stakes of that should have been huge. Now you've got like a murder on your shoulders as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like, keep in mind, also being accused of a murder, right? Robert Redford is like, you would probably, I mean, it would still technically be a black hat hacker by these days, but he's doing it for ethical concerns. Sure. He's a bit of a hippie. He would never cause harm to anyone. In fact, his hacking is a vector to get money from harmful entities into those that would make society a better place. The idea of him being on the run for a murder would be an anathema to him. It would be awful if people thought he had killed people. But again, that's just a scene. Well, that's also the stupid, sexy Robert Redford again.
I mean, and you can see that done well, because that was the plot of the original Mission Impossible that we discussed, was the framing of Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt for the murder of his team, right? In a political
scandal. I would add, clearly Ethan Hunt has dropped many a body. So, whereas Robert Redford, not so much. Like, so, but yeah, it's like the script flirts with these overt avenues for tension, like, and conflict, and it walks you right up to the avenue, and it goes, "Oh, hello, Duncan, enjoying one of your favorite movies when you were 20 years old. Would you like to come down Tension Avenue?" And you go, "Oh, I'd fucking love to, actually. Fucking, this will be mega." And well, fuck off, because it's comedy hour with Dan Aykroyd. So fuck you. Like, what's that? Like, don't do that to me. It's like the movie actually blue balls you like routinely. Over and over and over again. And I was just like, I was honestly waiting for a big twist, a big reveal. The closest it gets to is the introduction of James Earl Jones, which is just like some Wizard of Oz shit. Oh, there's a guy behind a guy. And it's James Earl Jones with a mega voice, like sound. So foundationally, this could have been like, I don't know, if it was the first in a series, you might forgive it and go, it's that tricky first movie where you introduce all the characters. It's not, but it plays like that. It's like Monty says, it's a caper movie. It's a caper movie without a really exciting caper, right? Which is like problem number one in a caper movie. It's a heist movie where the heist is Robert Redford, walking like he's got fucking hemorrhoids. It's a fucking spy movie where the spies can't even do basic body language. Like, and ultimately it's an ensemble cast movie where the ensemble cast get about 5 lines because Robert Redford has to be in every single fucking scene with an extreme close-up on his leathery parched skin. So I don't know
he was also kind of looking old in this, if I'm going to be honest. You know, it's a far cry from his heyday in the 70s and 80s.
Bro, ever since Butch Cassidy and the Sundance, it's like he just walked into the desert. Kind of, we're talking about Dune at a part of this one. He just basically did the fucking Paul Atreides and just walked off into the desert and got sandblasted, and he's just been permanently 80 for about 40 years. It's actually insane. But again, Robert Redford is a great actor. No doubt about it. He's entertaining. He's perfect for popcorn, box office fodder. And unfortunately, there's not, considering he is the focal point of the movie to its detriment, I would argue, there's not even really a lot for him to do. And also the love interest, chemistry, it wasn't there, was it? Wasn't there. I mean, say what you will about Rene Russo and the Thomas Crown affair. At least that scene with Pierce Brosnan when he's ejaculated so much he's dying of dehydration. You're a magnificent woman. Now get me a fucking water, please. Get me some electrolytes. Like, that's actually, you believe that he has been up all night doing the nasty. But there's none of that in here. Robert Redford's just like, will you take me back? Will you take me back? No, you ran away. You're a liar. Final scene. All right, then. So it's really tough for me because it's like I just kept waiting for the thing that was going to make the penny drop that this is like a good film and worth watching. But it's like you said, it's an exercise in mediocrity because I think ultimately it was one of those films, kind of like what Russell Crowe and Ridley Scott do, where they'll just every like few years, they just go, do you want to come to my vineyard and just make a film? And you go, yeah, all right then. And this was just a jolly up. It was a bunch of actors who all wanted to work with each other, just wanted to do a film, hang out on set, have some good memories. And it's widely regarded by all of the cast. I was reading interviews before today's show, and they're all like, I had so much fun on the set of that movie. It was great to meet this guy. We're lifelong friends now. It all sounds like they had a good time. I fucking didn't, though. So fuck you all.
The thing is, obviously I picked this as like my guilty pleasure film. This is a film I as a soft spot in my heart. Like, first of all, I'm a massive mark for Robert Redford. I actually do just think Robert Redford is. It's why, in some ways, I do think that the fucking real like duo in film is Butch Cassidy. It's for Robert Redford and Paul Newman. They're both brilliant
all-time
actors
great
combo who are insanely amiable and have fantastic chemistry on camera. So it's why separately, I also watch any of these guys in any film they're in. Like, I think they're all just fucking brilliant. So the same thing, like Robert Redford can carry a lot of this for me. I'll also say as well, here's the difference. Even though I know what you mean by him looking old, difference is this is the type of old I actually think looks good on men, where it's like you've actually done it somewhat naturally. You know, you've just like, you can tell that the guy was good looking. He still has all the camera presence, still super amiable. He can vaguely pull off the idea he's a sex symbol, but not maybe at this age. By the way, I also do think, even though I agree they didn't do anything with the actual relationship, I do think the actress though, that Mary McDonnell, I'm a big fan of hers. Like, even though she hasn't been in that much stuff, people are probably going to remember her best as like the fucking president in Battlestar Galactica, if you remember that one.
She's so good in that, by the way. She's real good.
That's like a classic one. What was the other one? Fuck, there was one more. Oh, Donnie Darko. She's the mom in Donnie Darko, if you remember. Yeah. She's one thing she does very well as an actress. I just think she's actually underused, is because, dude, she herself brings a gravitas. Like, as a female actress, one thing I loved about her is, like in this movie, her character just has like a presence that imbues class to the film, if you know what I mean. Like, there's a lot of actresses that are just, you can cast them in any role. In one movie, they are the person who's just some fucking woman that's fucking. This woman in her roles always has like a level of like significance as an actor somehow. So I actually just thought she did a good job in that regard. They didn't do anything with it, like you said. In fact, I'd say that's the biggest summary for me, is this is a film that on the one hand, I agree, like you say, it does feel like it's something where it's just a movie that they're doing in their careers and they had a good time, so great stuff. But it could have been so much more. Like, it's hinting at so much more. It's trying to do so much more, but it just spreads itself way too thin. Like, if I had to actually summarize it, I would say this. Literally, the way I would fix this movie is things like, it would be literally like, wouldn't add. I would remove characters from the ensemble cast. I would remove plot lines from the thing. I would remove some of the jokes and some of the levity, and I would allow some of the other bigger parts to play a little bit more and breathe a bit more, because what I feel like you should have done is just use the comedy every now and then to bring up the tension. Instead, it was more like this was like a comedy that would just veer into being serious for a little, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then it would come back into being a comedy. But like I say earlier on the stuff like, and give him head, like that stuff's, that's too much in the comedy vein. You can't put those jokes into this film.
It's the MASH of spy heist movies.
Yes.
Why won't the horror of this war ever end? I don't know. Let's have a look at Houlihan's bra. It's like, what the fuck's happening here, guys? This is ridiculous. No, you're totally right. I mean, the idea of removing to make it a better movie, I completely agree. I think if the team was smaller, I think if like Dan Aykroyd had... if Dan Aykroyd was the tech guy who's in the back of the room, like a wacky Q type character, you just trot out for one or two jokes. Sidney Poitier is the heart of the team, actually, the former CIA operative who's now working, with Robert Redford in private security, but he's got like, a dark past, so we can mine some tension there. I wouldn't even have had Mary on the team as like a permanent addition. I think I would have like wrote it in that it's like, oh, we've got to seduce a guy. Oh, I know this former spy. I know that, and he has to go and get her, and then that explains why she's so bad at the seductive.
By the way, they did a bad job with that
done
too.
It for like 20 years. Yeah.
What they didn't explain there is that famously, Monty, is also a very famous component of hacking. It's called social engineering, where you just talk to someone, they get you get like a secretary, like you in a system or something. What they don't explain is that she herself is showing actually a skill set of hackers. It's just she's got the social version as opposed to a computer. They didn't make that explicit enough.
In many ways, like, despite the fact that the MacGuffin is literally just a Deus Ex Machina, where like the little number, the letters all change on the screen, and then it just lets you into the Federal Reserve. I actually think that this is a more, in some ways, as you say with the social engineering, is a more realistic depiction of hacking than we got in many movies in the 90s, frankly, because they actually do have to do the legwork a lot of the time, and they have to use disguises.
I don't know when we're going to do this. But I can't lie, I would be totally down. I actually, unironically, will defend the movie Hackers as a fucking guilty pleasure class. I love that movie. I've watched that movie so many times.
I actually haven't seen it in a very long time, so it'd be a fun one, probably.
I wish there was cool nightclubs of hackers and shit in New York City or whatever,
I mean, put it this way. Again, I'm saying this off the top of my head, having not watched Hackers since it come out. I definitely remember it fondly
it's fun. Here's the difference. It's not trying to be a serious, that film. It's more fun, that one. It is fun. It's a fun
I actually wanted Johnny Lee Miller not to be a talentless hack, because I fucking loved Trainspotting, and I thought he did a great job of bringing Sick Boy to life. So I actually wanted Johnny Lee Miller to go on to be this great fucking, mega heartthrob actor. Total piece of shit, of course. But yeah, I mean, I do remember Hackers, like, with a sort of, it wasn't taking itself too seriously, but I seem to recall that's what I liked about it. But no doubt it's going to be Batman Returns all over again now.
Because we do need to do this. We need to have a couple of categories where it's stuff like movies where we intentionally pick one that the others are all going to hate to hurt our feelings. It's basically like Change My Mind.
I've been doing that the whole fucking time.
It's true. Yeah, done it a few times.
What?
This week, the Count of MonteCristo, all 4 different versions.
No, we could do that, but I wouldn't like any of them. Anyway. I did it, one time with the Thomas Crown Affair? What was the other one that I did that you guys didn't like?
All your suggestions. That's how I remember it. I think about this podcast as basically
every week you just make us watch the Thomas Crown Affair. It's fucked up.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
I had one. What was the other one? You guys, I suggested Lost Boys and Near Dark, and you guys didn't have a big issue with those ones.
No. I mean, who suggested Fright Night? Was that me? I remember. Yeah. Sorry, Fright Night was unpopular. So
I like.
We all
Fright
get
Night.
one, I guess.
I liked it.
We all get one.
I'll say it. I even enjoyed parts of this movie, even if I didn't enjoy the movie itself. Here's what I actually liked about it, because I thought it's a really interesting, like, period piece these days to revisit in the late. It's a really cool time capsule, actually. So I actually didn't hate watching it because it made me it made me think about the early 90s and like the immediate post-Soviet era, and the perception around technology and hacking and the internet and computers at the time. So I thought it was a really fun time capsule, number one, but also because even though it fails in its ambitions, like it is actually been a very fun movie to discuss in terms of how it failed, in the same way that I felt that the Thomas Crown Affair was very similar. So I didn't hate watching this. I did hate watching Batman. Batman Returns I actively hated watching, but this one I did not.
Batman Returns is unironically the worst film we did in the entirety of the run so far, and it's going to be hard to beat that. I really do think that was such like dog shit. It was actually it was genuinely shocking to me. I had to take a break halfway through. I was getting a headache. I couldn't handle it, how bad it was. So this wasn't that. I mean, this was just one of those movies where in a word, it's frustrating. But
I don't feel like I didn't waste 2 hours of my time watching this movie. I found it interesting enough. And like as for the hackers thing, I think we could do a whole arc on just computer hacking in film, because like The Matrix kind of falls into that as well. And there were tons.
Games.
Oh yeah, there's tons of these movies in especially the 90s and early 2000s. And also for the other genre, you guys, like the guilty pleasure, I think we just do a nostalgia arc where we try and pick movies that we literally haven't seen since like our childhoods, and then see if they're any good now.
That's also why I picked this movie for this one, because I was trying to think, if you notice, if you don't know, guys, I see people getting lost with this all the time in the comments. The purpose is not, these are the 4 most famous or best movies in this genre. Obviously, within that, we do tend to put a really famous example, a really good example, but then we try to put like a little bit to round out the concept. So for this one, the reason I picked this one as the last one actually of the 4 we did was because like the others are like massive iconic films or classic, but the difference is this is one where it did go a bit under the radar, and also I did remember it had an insane cast. So I remember thinking like people are going to be shocked when they see the cast of this film.
Yeah, no, I didn't hate this. I would have never watched this movie if not for this show, and like it was fun. I had fun.
Obviously, we didn't talk about this too much, but I will also just throw this out there as well. Mate, Ben Kingsley is another person who almost can't make bad films, by the way. If you notice, like he's one of those people where the flaw of him in movies is unbelievable.
I mean, have you seen some of his video game movies? Because he's been in some fucking terrible
my point
movies.
Is he can't be bad in the movie.
Oh, that's true. He's
just good in every role I think I've ever seen him in. He's just a good actor.
What I like about him is that even in like really bad movies like Blood Rain, that video game adaptation, he's like a vampire king in that movie. And when he wants to do these weird character roles or villain roles, he just chews up the scenery, and he's like the best part of some of these movies. Yeah. So he does pick some bad movies though, but I think it's just for fun. Like he's like, I can be a video game vampire king. Fucking cool.
Yeah.
He was in the Prince of Persia movie too.
Also, by the way, that's an insane gamut of ability as well, because obviously people will know him for villain characters, but the joke is he was literally Gandhi, and he can do everything. That guy, he's got amazing range.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that's the thing. It's like, man, I would have liked to have seen more of him. I would have liked to have seen, I would have really liked to have seen more. Like, what happened in prison? Give me a flashback. Give me like a fucking.
Yeah, no, come on.
Give me something. Like, give me how this guy who was at one point like ethical, he's like showing loyalty to the mafia, who he knows aren't great people, or on the fringe. Show me turmoil. Just, it's like I said, this was a foundation of a movie. It was a foundation of a movie that had a lot of promise, but they just threw up a film. They just like said, we got really good foundations. Let's just build a rickety ramshackle house on top of it and not think too much about it. And it's kind of interesting because ultimately, for all of the film's failures, it was a huge financial success. It got nearly 5 times its budget at the box office.
Fucking hell, okay.
It was made for like 20-something million, 25 million, and it got over like 100 million at the box office. So it's like, it really goes to show you know, kind of there is something to be said. As I said, I don't think this is like a great film, but you know, people will go and see a movie with an ensemble cast. People, you know, it shows that even in the 90s,
sure.
Robert Redford, huge box office, Sidney Poitier, huge box office, and having the sort of more interesting elements of, like, say, you've got a River Phoenix in there, he's barely in it, but he was a big name at the time. Dan Aykroyd, you know, early 90s Dan Aykroyd. You know,
he was crazy popular because of Blues Brothers in the 80s.
Yeah, well, don't even forget. I mean, like, this is like.
We had all the comedies, mate. Remember, Spies Like Us get loads of shit back then.
If this is 92, I mean, when was Ghostbusters 2? When was the sequel? I was like one of the.
Ooh, that might be like early 90s.
It was early 90s.
So,
I think Ghostbusters was 89, right?
1989, apparently, Ghostbusters 2. 1989,
yeah. Ghostbusters is like 84.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, so 89 was Ghostbusters 2. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Ray Parker Jr. was the first ever record I got as a kid. You had to have that shit. So that's why I remember that little detail. But anyway, like Dan Aykroyd is still like really
of course. Your first ever record plagiarism, of course.
Yeah, I know. Well, I didn't know about that then. I didn't know. I was just enjoying it. But anyway, I mean, look.
Ghostbusters. It is a banger track, I can't lie. It's a good track.
It's an absolute banger. It's just like that remix busting on YouTube. Check it out. But anyway, the point is, like, this movie was successful pretty much just on its casting. And certainly not on the script, not on the premise, not even on the performances. Ultimately, as I said, everyone's too underutilized to really make a determination like, oh, they're mega in this film. And it was just a Robert Redford vehicle from start to finish, where Robert Redford makes that very much known by this almost like omnipresence in all the movies, doing action scenes with no action, romance scenes with no romance, tension scenes with no tension, fighting scenes with no fighting, murder scenes with no sense of danger, and he's just always there. And it's like, it's just a shame, because I definitely can see how this movie could have certainly raised its game and done a lot more. And ultimately, for me, again, the reason I walk away from it feeling quite cold is that with a cast like that, it should have been effortless. It should have just been a slam dunk that actually this is low key, some sort of sleeper 90s classic, but it just isn't that.
By the way, I'm with you on that. Like, the joke is, there's two ways you do this. You either make it like we're doing a parody of spies and espionage, in which case make it fun and keep it lighthearted, like this cast we've got. Or look at the cast, just do the usual suspects, you idiot. Like, you could actually just make like an amazing straight up film with this cast that would be like you say, like a fucking gem that everyone would recommend for years to come. But they kind of get caught between the two positions for me. There's my thoughts.
Yep.
There we go. All right, guys, we will start with our Denis Villeneuve arc next week with Arrival. See you then.